Welcome to the Go Big Redcast, the Husker Fan Sports Show.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast. I'm your host, David Gaspers, and I'm with Honky.
I just got to give another shout out to Will Compton, the trumpeter. Great guy. It was so cool. We got some photos with him and Alex. I'll show him at the end of this, but really cool weekend there. And that dude, he's awesome.
Very cool. Very cool. I saw that. Redcast Rob is also here.
Well, I just want to let you guys know that every time that the Redcast comes on, this is a collaboration. It doesn't necessarily mean that one person is taking over the show or leading the show. It's something that we all work on together as a team. And while, Dave, you may be the CEO of the Redcast, you oversee the operations of all of our roles.
That's
very
great,
true.
Rob.
Honky, why do I never know what Redcast Rob is talking about?
This one is from the presser today, I guess. But there's a lot about collaboration.
I think I know what he's talking about,
yeah.
But he always goes off, you know. I got to rein that guy back in. You know?
Well, you're like Frost with Whipple. You got to rein them in sometimes, man. That's how you got to do.
And that is literally what the reference is, Dave. because they were asking about the offense, is what it was, Dave. It was about whether or not Frost took over the offense in the second half, and they were saying, and he was talking about it being a collaboration between the two of them. And
gotcha. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Also, with Boomer. Boomer, your mic muted. Boomer.
What?
There you go.
Start over. You're muted.
All right. Yeah, I wasn't muted, but
fifth year of the Redcast.
Yeah,
We
the
still
host
do
had me
this. It's
muted. Way to
okay.
go. But anyway, I'm just excited to be talking about a week one win against an FCS opponent where we kind of struggled early, but we had a running back breakout with over 100-yard game coming off a week 0 loss to a conference foe. Are we sure we're not rerunning last year's episodes? This sounds awfully familiar. Yeah. Either way,
I thought you were going with the whole like, hey, we won week 1. I don't even acknowledge week 0 exists, right? It's week 0. It's preseason, but yeah, to your point, Boomer, it does seem like we're having the same discussions year over year, but this time I felt it was a little bit different. We'll take a deeper dive into the outcomes of the battle versus North Dakota, which resulted in a 38-17 victory. And yet it was a little ugly there for actually too long for comfort, but ultimately a 21-point victory there. Before we take that deep dive and a few other things on the tweets of the week, let's talk about our sponsors, Honky.
Yeah. Well, our upcoming episode here, and this is kind of hot off the presses, is we will be broadcasting live from the Hill Varsity Club this Friday, September 9th at 6 p.m. following Hill Varsity Radio. Dave, you will be down from Colorado for the weekend. Boomer, we're still not sure yet, so we're not confirming Boomer, but the potential. We might have a Boomer there one too. And I don't know, Rob, I know we've talked a little bit. We might have a guest or two, but we haven't. I don't know if we've finalized anything.
I haven't finalized anything yet. So.
But we know that, so we'll be out there at Omaha area Redcasters. Come down. It would be great to have you at the Hill Varsity Club. We've been there over the summer, and it's great food and great drinks, and we'll have a good chance to. It'd be great to meet some of you in person as well. We'll also be live streaming from there too for that night. But that should be a lot of fun. While we're talking about Hill Varsity, go to hillvarsity.com/subscribe. Use the promo code REDCAST. Get $10 off your annual subscription. Alumni Hall, 2 Lincoln locations, downtown 11th and P, and South Point Pavilions behind Barnes & Noble. And I'm wearing my hat that is from Alumni Hall. They're the official Adidas hat. I was wearing my official Adidas shirt at the or polo that they gave us to the game on Saturday. Very good time. FSC Edge, Redcasters, if you're looking to make a career switch, go to www.jobs@fsc.com. And last but not least, Smack and Smooch, custom shirts and specialty items. You can find them at Smack and Smooch on Facebook and Twitter. Shane and Laura out there in Elwood. You see their shirts here, but also we have the new War Daddy Up shirt. And that's been selling pretty good. I know my sister just said she got one, and go get yourself one of those Redcasters as well. So, Dave, that's that.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, let's Before we head into our tweets of the week, remind everyone about the Go Big Redcast bets. That's our Yahoo Fantasy College Football Pick'em. We've got 1 week in the books. I've not actually looked to see. I didn't have a great week. I'll be honest with you on my bets. I think we went 1 of 4 in our best bets. So that was not pretty. Yes, Rob, you somehow were the one that got the bet right. I never understand that. But if you want to join the Go Big Redcast Bets group, it's ID number 5209. Password is, of course, Betcast. And go ahead and get on there. And it should be a year-long competition. We do exclude the first or the lowest 2 weeks that you have. So if you missed last week for any reason, you're still getting in, and you have a week to spare. And so that would be awesome. I'm sure we're growing in numbers there, so it should be awesome as we go through the season. All right, Hunk, let's take some national news here a little bit, kind of reactions to what happened over the last week in college football. And even before we really played football on Thursday night, there was rumors of this, and it came out on Friday. But the College Football Playoff Board of Managers, which I guess is the actual presidents of some of the schools that each represent each of the leagues and Notre Dame, approved a 12-team college football playoff field, and it could start should be no later than 2026. There is a small window of opportunity if some sort of TV negotiations occur to start that earlier, even though I don't think that's a done deal by any means. But Boomer, I'll start with you on this. This has been out there for a while. This is the same proposal with a little bit of tweaks because the same proposal that was out, say, last year or so in the Big Ten and the Pac-12, I believe, voted it down. This is a 12-team playoff. That's the same thing. But there is 6 conference champions that are included in this. So the conference champions do get automatic bids, and then 6 qualifiers that are out of that. So the top 4 get buys. And they have to be conference champions. That would exclude Notre Dame at present. And then you have seeds 5 through 8 hosting on campus the first round games, taking on teams 9 through 12. And then it would go to neutral site games. You'd have 4 of those quarterfinals. And we have 6 of the big 6 bowls, right? So 4 of them would be right there. Semifinals would be the other 2. And then you'd have a championship game to wrap things up. What do you think, man?
Well, I'm just happy that America can sleep well at night, knowing we've defended and protected the sanctity and pageantry of the sugar and cotton bowls again. So at least they'll survive. So there's that. Overall, it's a step in the right direction. I've always been a proponent of an expanded playoff just for the nature of the sport and the number of teams involved. I don't think that's any secret. We've covered that many, many times here on the Redcast. So this brings a lot of opportunity. There's been some good articles where people have gone back and shown all the teams that would have been on the playoffs and all the different opportunities that teams would have had. No guarantee any of them would have actually won any of these playoffs, but they'd have access. And I think that's one of the big reasons this finally did pass this time, especially with realignment as it is. I think this was probably an effort by the ACC, Big 12, Pac-12 to say, hey, we need to stay in these conferences. You can still make the playoffs. So, 6 conference champs are guaranteed. And there's only 2 big major conferences right now. That's a lot of room for a lot of other people to get those. Generally, I like it. I like this, playing on home sites. It is a little odd that if you get a bye week and then you have to go to a bowl, you don't get rewarded with a home game. I thought that was a little strange. Although
it's always been out there for 12 teams.
Yeah, most of those are home games anyway. Those bowl games for the SEC type schools. So maybe it's not such a big stretch, but generally I think it's a good step forward, and I think people will be generally excited with it once it kicks off.
Yeah, it's been really interesting listening to a lot of the national shows. It feels like they've been asking for this for years, and then it happens, and I hear several negative reactions to it. And even on Twitter, like Barrett Sallee, CBS Sports was referencing the Georgia-Oregon game and here's welcome to the playoffs. This is what you're going to get every single year. And I mean, that's a big leap. But Honky, I mean, I know that you haven't always been a favor of expanded playoffs, and we've had Brett Ciancia of Pick Six Previews on multiple times. He's adamant that the 4-team playoff is the best. Phil still says the same thing. I mean, what are you thinking?
Well, it creates a lot of things that I like that were the things that scared me about a playoff back in the day. I want the sanctity, so to speak, of the regular season to mean something. Well, you want to be a top 4 seed. You want to win your conference. So there's all the negative things that happen in an NFL season where guys sit out the last couple of games if they've already made it, stuff like that. You're not doing that. If you need to win your conference, you want to be a top 4 seed. I love the idea that the top 4 seeds are conference champs because that keeps us from having the SEC having 2 or 3 of those top 4 spots as well. I think it is brilliant to have. I think it's the top 6 conference champions, right? So they're not saying it's all Power 5. Technically, one of your Power 5 conferences could have such a bad, lousy champion that maybe they're not one of the top 6, and you could have 4 of the Power 5, and 2 of the other ones could be group of 5 ones. I mean, conceivably, it probably wouldn't happen very often, but so it doesn't exclude people. It is more inclusive of a playoff system, and I love the idea, the concept, the idea that you could possibly have December home games being played at college stadiums up north. And Nebraska, we're going to get this thing turned around, and someday Nebraska's hosting some team from the South up in December for all those memories that we have of playing Florida State and Miami back in the Orange Bowl back in the day. That is really exciting. So I think they got this right. I would have never said that 15 years ago. I would have been fighting it tooth and nail 15 years ago, but so much has changed between that time and now that to me, this just feels right.
Yep, it's very true. Rob, thoughts?
I mean, I'm just really looking forward to, basically what amounts to be 5 teams that aren't in the SEC play 7 teams from the SEC. I mean, that's going to be really exciting.
So you're saying that all of the at-large bids will be from the SEC?
Well, who has the TV
Big Ten
contract?
will only get one?
Is it ESPN and the SEC network have the TV contract on the playoff games?
Well, that's the key. So let's talk about that.
Because
they would not after 2026.
Interesting.
So that's the key here. So
I kid, but I mean, it just feels like the way that they do these playoffs now, like with the 4 teams, it seems like there's always 2 SEC teams, right? Like, and it doesn't matter how good anybody else is. It's always like, okay, Alabama, somebody else, and 2 other teams, and you can fight over who the other 2 teams should be. It's kind of
and I'm not saying that's not going to happen again, where a second SEC team could be favored to reach a college football final with the SEC champion. But I'll tell you right now that the SEC second place team will not be one of the top 4 seeds. That sounds certain in this scenario. And they will have multiple at-large bids, but I think the Big Ten could also have multiple at-large bids on a regular basis. And to your point of ESPN playing favorites, I mean, that's what we've lived with over the last decade. And I think that's why right now it's not going to happen until 2026. And unless ESPN and the other TV networks want to play nice with each other, that's just the way it's going to play out, because the Big Ten has put their foot down, and you can see that with their TV contract that we talked about on previous shows, that they are not aligned with ESPN being the sole provider of college football, right? And they see actually there's a lot of monetary value on spreading out those games just like the NFL does. So I would expect in 2026 that you've got Boomer. Let's help me with the math here. You're going to have 4 first-round games, 4 quarter-final games, 2 semis, and a final. So you got 4. You have 9, 11 games there.
And so, to answer your question, Dave, though, real quick, is I'm actually all for it. It's the only sport in college that doesn't have a tournament format to finish it out, and it's the only one of the divisions. The FBS is the only one that doesn't have a playoff format. It works everywhere else. There's absolutely no reason other than these the toilet bowl, and the cotton ear swab bowl, get played every year for whatever sponsor money.
Well, and ESPN owns most of those bowls, to your point, Rob.
Well, and Dave, I think something that would have bothered me 15 years ago was this, honestly, and I kind of say this tongue in cheek, but the sanctity of the bowls. Well, that's just completely gone down the toilet the last 20 years as the bowls have doubled to the point where, the Bahamas Bowl has, 300 people at it and all that, or USC and UCLA are coming over to the Big Ten. How important is that Rose Bowl anymore? And that tradition of it. We're traditionally Orange Bowl guys from the Big 8 and the Big 12 days. That doesn't mean anything like that, like it used to. So all of that, all the changes that have happened over the last quarter century have led us to a point now where it's like, let's just do it. I mean, this makes sense, and it can make it better, and it can make the season exciting if more teams have an opportunity to get into it. And it still rewards teams for being at the top. That's the one thing we've always said. We don't want this to water down the regular season. I think that's Brett Ciancia's point, and I'm sure he's still saying that right now. Mm-hmm. But I don't think this waters down the season. If you need to be a top 4 seed to get that bye, if you need to be a 5 through 8 seed to get the home game,
every layer.
Yes, it's constantly incentivizing you so that you're never sitting your star player at any point so that they don't play. Any of that stuff. You need to get the highest seed you can get so that you can make it as far as you can into the playoffs. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah,
and it really does, I think, incentivize other teams to keep playing in the season too. You're not going to win your division, but you still have a chance to get one of those 6 at-large bids. So there's a lot for teams to keep playing for. Yeah.
Going for that,
especially in some divisions, like the Big Ten East is a great example. You've got Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. Somebody's gonna knock each other out, but they might be really good teams, and
so there's a lot of incentives. Third team in the Big Ten East will think that they're competing for that every single time.
That's a great point. In this day and era where the bowl games are so important, and yet what does everyone do that's not in the playoffs? They sit out their bowl games. This gives you more opportunities for more teams to be involved later in the season where players are like, I'm not sitting this out. We have a chance to get into the playoff. We have a chance to win. Once you're in the playoff, we have a chance to play for a national championship. We just got to keep winning, And I think that the 4-team playoff has kind of created the opposite. It became this all or nothing. If you're not one of those 4, who cares if you're a New Year's Bowl game? Who cares? Those aren't the same thing as what a New Year's Bowl used to be anyways. And everything's become secondary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this could be a long conversation. I'll just wrap it up by saying that. I mean, I think that it's not just ESPN controlling the narrative. I mean, someone had that comment there, but I think the value of having multiple networks have playoff games to advertise means that they're going to promote the sport that much more across all of their networks, on all their social media, have all of their talking heads talking about it. It's not just ESPN controlling the playoff show every Tuesday night or whatever when they come out with the rankings, or other things. It's CBS and NBC and Fox also doing that. Yep. There'll be more coverage across the board, and a lot more revenue, and hopefully more interest from just the average fan. Now, I mean, I'm sure could be potential downsides. People talked about how that whoever isn't in the top 4 is like a lamb being led to slaughter. You're sure you made the playoff, but now you're going to lose your last game opposed to winning a bowl game. And I'm like to your point, Honky, no one pays attention to those games, those playoff games or those bowl games that don't matter any longer anyway. So we'll see. But I think overall it's a nice change. We'll see if it happens before 2026. Speaking of neutral site games and playoffs, we see a lot of neutral site games in the first week of the regular season. And Honky, I think you had quite a bit of traction with this tweet right here, where you asked if people are huge fans of these neutral site games.
Yeah, I could tell that this one, specifically the graphic, it shows how far Oregon had to travel to Atlanta to play Georgia, traveling to Atlanta. And it was 6+ hours of flights versus a 2-hour drive. Now, Oregon, I don't know how much.
Oregon drive through Nebraska, it looks like.
I mean, they may have left half their team the way that they played. I don't know. But, and I don't know that would have mattered where they played it. Let me be very clear here. This is more just the point of like literally putting quotation marks around what a neutral site means. I mean, if Oregon versus Georgia in Atlanta is neutral, give me a break. And this is the problem that it still isn't getting fixed. The college football playoff isn't fixing this issue, but there's still inequities that happen inside the seasons. How do you get conferences? Some play 8-team conference schedules, some play 9. Some, have made a history of just only playing neutral site games, like Alabama this week. We talked about it a week ago that if Nick Saban wins at Texas, it's their third it would be his third non-conference victory on the road since he started there. And that just is crazy because that's all they've played. They don't go on the road very often. Now, the SEC is changing that up. And in future years, I think they have more of these scheduled. But right now, it just seems like, you want more equity in how you schedule throughout the season. I will say this weekend, and Boomer, I know your thoughts on neutral site games, but who the heck right now, who wasn't playing at one? I mean, even Georgia Tech right now is playing Clemson at the Mercedes-Benz Dome. Last night, LSU was playing Florida State in the Superdome. It's like, why do we have these cathedrals of college football and they never play games in them?
Yeah, that just boggles my mind, especially when you look at like LSU and Florida State. Yeah, they were playing in the Superdome, and then next year they're playing in Orlando.
Yeah.
Why are you playing at neutral sites in the states your schools are in? That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I don't comprehend why you would do that. It's not like those are small little podunk, college towns with, stadiums of a few thousand. And those are, like you said, they're cathedrals of college football. Play the games there. That's what college football is supposed to be. People don't want this to become professional. We'll stop playing it in freaking cold, sterile, corporate professional stadiums.
That's what LSU did that a number of years ago with Wisconsin, where they did a home and away neutral site thing at the Silverdome and then at Lambeau Field. And I just don't get it. I mean, if you're the Chamber of Commerce in Madison and you are the 10,000 students that have to travel, like that's part of the fun of being on campus and being a student is that. And I have heard, and I just want to clarify this too, because we posted some things about this, and people are like, well, didn't you guys travel 4,000 miles to Ireland and play in a neutral site game? Little different. That wasn't just some neutral site game. That's Northwestern's home game that they gave up and decided to play over there. And then we'll play them next year in Lincoln, Nebraska. So this isn't like what Boomer said, where next year Florida State is hosting in Orlando, LSU. We're right back to playing in Lincoln next year. Nebraska's not going to do what Northwestern did. We're not giving up home games that could be played in Memorial Stadium to play them across overseas. Now, if someone wants to pay us a lot of money and give us an opportunity to be on national TV so we can lose, we'll always take that opportunity, right? But no, that's a little different. Was that neutral? Sure, but I guess it's neutral when we play them in Evanston too. So.
Yeah. And to your point there, I mean, there was no home field advantage for Northwestern in Dublin. In fact, it was the opposite. But that's the same thing in Evanston, actually, right? Because there's always more Nebraska fans than Northwestern fans wherever they play, where that's not the case when you're talking about Georgia playing in the Mercedes-Benz Dome in downtown Atlanta. So, totally get it. All right. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess we're mostly done with the neutral site games, I believe, for this year after this Clemson-Georgia Tech game, which is on behind me. I'm rooting for the under if anybody's watching. It's looking good so far. We'll have them again here at the end of the year.
I always forget college football's on like every night of the week now, isn't it? Like
for the first weekend for sure.
Yeah,
just
Labor Day weekend. Yeah,
it is Labor Day weekend. I just forgot that there was a game like last night. I forgot that LSU and Florida State were playing until.
So did LSU special.
LSU special teams. Yeah,
it was a great game though.
It was a great game.
Super fun to watch the end of that. Mm-hmm. And hey, I mean, you got to make your extra points, right? I mean, it got blocked actually. Wow. I mean, geez, amazing. Well, those LSU fans are hurting. There's no doubt about that. But we're a Husker fan podcast, so let's talk about Husker football and put on our scarlet-colored glasses and talk about Husker football and everything that it entails. And Honky, I think you want to dive into this conversation about fandom and what it means, not just for Nebraska fans, but college football fans in general. Do you want me to bring up that first tweet?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead and do that. So it was something that we've been thinking about, and we plan to dive in tonight. Two things can be true at one time. It's possible to criticize Nebraska and still be a great fan. Absolutely. In fact, I know we get called Kool-Aid, and maybe that's because we have Rob on the show, but I think that we criticize and we are constructive in our criticism all the time on this show. We talk about things that we need to do better and things we didn't do well. But so it's possible that you can criticize Nebraska and still be a great fan. It's also possible, number two, to be constructive, not destructive with that criticism. And we've had some questions from people on, how do you define what is constructive and not destructive? We can get into that. I don't think it's that hard to figure out the difference, to be quite honest with you, but we can certainly have that discussion. But the point is that what you start to see, if you've been on Twitter at all, and for those that aren't, congratulations, you have better mental health than the rest of us. But there's times where, what is too much. And so we've got a kind of a collection of tweets here that we've taken from the last couple of days. Dr. Rob Zaska, who was on the show a few weeks ago. I love UNL and Nebraska football, but I agree as well. Being critical is different from hating. Like most normal people, I hate Iowa. Got to appreciate that. Dr. Kool-Aid MD, the corrupt donkey on Twitter. And again, if you're not on Twitter, you're like, what's the donkey? No, there's a Husker donkey out there. And he goes, many in this fan base are letting some character traits shine through. I'm actually shocked to see some of the things I've seen. You do you, but I'm not participating in that toxicity. I'll be at the game next Saturday having fun and cheering on my guys. Go Big Red forever. Sarah, she goes, if you're going to start booing Nebraska at Memorial Stadium, just stay home. That got a lot of traction. That tweet did there in Nebraska. We can talk about this, discuss this. There were some boos that happened at halftime. Also, Tony Hayek, can we also remember that we don't boo the other team? I was so embarrassed when North Dakota came out and some of our fans started booing them. That's not who we are, Husker Nation. And last but not least, Lindsay Yu says it's hard to watch /see, honestly. And that's the fan toxicity she means. And the donkey responded, fans believe they're entitled to certain results because they bought tickets and own red shirts. When things aren't going well, their true identity comes out, always will be this way. So that kind of just sets the table. Let's set the discussion of like, what should a fan do and what shouldn't they do? I also want to be very clear that Nebraska, I don't think is necessarily any different than any other fan base. We get the same idiots on message boards that are writing whatever they want. We get the same people that say things at games that, I took Alex with me to a game and this for about a quarter and a half. And every section has it. And you have a guy, somebody behind you shouting something. And a lot of times it's the same thing, quite honestly, that I'm actually thinking in my head, just to be very clear. I'm like, oh yeah, that guy's not, what he's saying isn't necessarily wrong, but it shouldn't be said. It shouldn't be said out loud, or that word that shot out. And there's Alex, 10 years old sitting next to me. I'm like, does it have to be like that? Part of this is how would you define, and this is going to be different from person to person, but how do you define what is a good fan or what is something you should do or shouldn't do? We have quite a few people that are following along right now. We'd love to get your comments and get some of that kind of incorporated into this, but maybe let's start around the room. And Dave, I'll start with you. What do you think? What is the role of the fan, and when do things get a little bit too far, or what is allowed, what's not allowed?
That's very philosophical of you, Honky.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what.
This is a very philosophical discussion here.
What is the role of a fan?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if I really think of it in those terms. I mean, I totally get some of the comments that are saying, we shouldn't boo, etc. Booing North Dakota, I didn't realize we did that. So that would never be appropriate, especially if it's the beginning of the game. In my opinion.
When they came out, there was some boos, and it was a little.
Look, there's been boos in Memorial Stadium for a long time. I'm sure Boomer can find articles from 1924 when there's boos out there, I suppose. But even I remember Osborne, taking the microphone and shaming the fans and whatnot back in the day for various different things. And I mean, he typically when he got booed, it was him or the team in general. I don't know if any of the boos on Saturday at halftime were directed at any one player. I don't think so. I think it was just generally they were disappointed with the performance, and that's where you can say fans can express disappointment in not seeing good football, right? I mean, I think as Nebraska fans in particular, that's all we're really looking for, is that a team's well prepared, ready to play, and is giving it all, right? And sometimes you feel like you didn't see that, and that's pretty frustrating as a fan, right? So I get the good decorum that we should take in most instances, but there's also a level where, look, I mean, it's not about paying for tickets or all that type of stuff, or I'm alumni. It's just like, look, the reason that you're playing there and it has a scholarship and the coaches get $5 million a year is because the fans show up, right? And the fans watch on TV. Without us, it doesn't happen whatsoever. And I don't think that entitles you to everything, but at least watching good football is a part of it, right? So if you haven't felt like you've seen that, you can probably lay a little bit into them.
Well, here's some audio I want to play, and this is from What's the Word on 93.7 The Ticket. And this was Chancellor Brewington, friend of the Redcast. He was on a lunch cast with Rob over the offseason. And he specifically, he mentions the booing that happened at halftime. So this is, at least we're getting the perspective here of a player.
Y'all popped out, though. Y'all did boo us, though, and that really hurt. No, that was because the only thing that fans have to understand is I can get if you're frustrated with with whatever, but the players have to hear that going into the locker room, and for some guys, that's their first college football game in Memorial Stadium, and you getting booed, like it's just not a good feeling.
Yeah.
But we bounce back. Like you shouldn't have to battle adversity from your own fans. You know what I'm saying? Like
keep the booing out of Memorial.
They go on a little bit longer, but I like that. You shouldn't have to battle adversity from your own fans. This gets back to literally my question. Like, what is the role of a fan? I want to show something that we posted last week here. And this is just in general, whether you're a fan or not. Saw this sign at Redcast Junior School during orientation a few weeks back. Thought there might be a few keyboard warriors who could benefit from this advice too. Before you speak, think. T, is it true? H, is it helpful? I, is it inspiring? N, is it necessary? K, is it kind? We have a tweet that we also want to show from the tweets of the week. And this is something that we talked about last week. And it ended up being fake. We thought we vetted it. I had heard it on some other news shows or actual radio shows, but it was a quote that supposedly Pat Fitzgerald made, but it wasn't. It's a fake, right? And we didn't do our job. We didn't vet that well enough as a Redcast. I take that on me. It goes right back to the T and think. Is it true? And there are things that we say and things that we show on this show that people would assume if we're talking about it, that we actually have some idea of what we're talking about and that it was actually factual. And they turn around and they go to work the next day and say, hey, Pat Fitzgerald said this thing. And if he didn't, then we're guilty of pushing something that's not true. The reason I posted this tweet a week ago was in response to a very well-known recruit here in Lincoln who his parents, who are great people, went out in support of him on Twitter because he was getting kind of attacked basically on social media boards for incorrect stuff. And we get into this discussion. Are they kids? Are they young men? Now they're getting NIL and money. So does that make it okay to do? And these parents are just like, look, I mean, imagine it's your kid with people that have no idea what they're talking about, attacking your kid on social media and on message boards. And that's not right either. I mean, and so whereas fans, there becomes a point, I feel like as a Redcast, the reason I wanted us to have this discussion is that at least we can be a little bit of a voice of the fans too. And we've always tried to be the voice of some reason. And it's like, look, I'm frustrated when we're not doing well. You guys, I was texting with you guys in the first half and I was sitting there saying, look, guys, we need to be running the ball. And I'm attacking what we're doing or not doing, things I want to see, but that's a whole different level than, we've seen on social media, individual players getting attacked and things. And that just, is that helpful? That's the thing. If you're a fan, I go back to this thing here. H, is it helpful? Is the role of the fan to be so vocal that you turn off recruits from wanting to come here, that you make players potentially think of going somewhere else? In transfer, that's my part of my question. And I'm doing a lot of talking. I've got some other thoughts, but I kind of want to let you guys, someone else fill in for a second.
Let me just mention one thing, and maybe I'll throw it over to Boomer or Rob. Is back to Brewington's comments about the booing at the end of the half. Is that I totally understand where he's coming from there, and I appreciate that. And to your point, Honky, about the message boards and all that type of stuff, that's what's changed over the 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. 25 years ago when we were in college, you didn't have all that type of stuff. A lot of the message boards, when they first kind of launched, there's almost like the dark web, right? It's like it wasn't common Husker stuff. It was like a bunch of really fans that are really into it, and they're talking about stuff, and they never thought that a parent of a recruit would be reading that. And a lot of people haven't changed their attitudes of how those message boards works. And I've never been on them. I don't read them. I don't care about them. I don't like any of the personal stuff at all anyway. So it doesn't really matter. But I guess to to my point about like, it was it okay or not to boo Memorial Stadium, is that I think I totally understand where Chancellor Billington is coming from here, but also I think the players should have an understanding of that. You have a fan base that actually knows a lot about football, and they know that you should be up on North Dakota at halftime, just playing good, clean, solid football. And they weren't doing that, right? And so I think there's a relationship between fans and players there where it's like, don't treat us like we're idiots, essentially, and we're going to accept any product out there. Mm-hmm. We want a good product because we think that's how we should be able to perform, every Saturday, right? So there's a balance there. That's all I want to say. Boomer or Rob, I mean, I'm more than happy to have you guys jump in on this. Boom.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm trying to think of any game I've been to. I don't recall ever booing the team per se. I may have occasionally voiced displeasure at like a coaching decision, like maybe deciding to punt when I think we should go for it or something to that effect. Might be something I, may have vocalized, but I don't think I've ever booed the team per se. And it does just kind of raise an interesting point, kind of what the role of the fan is, which is why I'm glad Honky was talking about this. When it comes to Nebraska, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, the fans are so key to what this program is. Because can you imagine any other program fan base putting up with what we have over the last 20 years and still showing up?
Traveling to Dublin like we did?
Dublin, no. Good Lord. I mean, you saw UCLA's game this weekend against Bowling Green, I think it was.
Yeah, 27,000 people.
I think we had more people watching our podcast than actually saw that game live. I mean, so there is that. And that kind of, again, and that just kind of goes in what is the role of a fan? What can they do when they are disappointed in something? Their choices, they're either just boo, some of them do, which again, I don't like that, or they just stop showing up. And that's happened in Nebraska in the past. I've been at a lot of games. I almost never leave a game early. And at times when it's gotten dark here, there's been a lot of times when fans just left. I mean, I think we all remember that in the Callahan years, the Riley era. There's been a lot of times when that stadium was pretty empty by halftime,
that's one way that fans speak, right? They speak with their money. They speak with that you put the paper bag on your head. You just don't show up. Part of this discussion, the first part that was, it's possible to be critical too. So I want to make sure here's one thing too, is when we come off and we attack the people that are frustrated. And, you can't say that about, well, no, you can say some things. In fact, I want to play this little video that we had from Steve Sipple when he was on about a month ago, when he talked about Ron Brown, longtime Husker assistant. Now he's an analyst. Minute-long video here of him talking about what Ron Brown says about Husker fans.
But Ron Brown, of all people, a few years ago said something that stuck with me about the way things have gone here, and that he was very adamant that the fans have a right to voice their disapproval. You guys are invested. You're heavily invested in this, and that does give you a right to voice disapproval. And I sometimes have to remind myself. Sometimes I'm a little taken aback by the level of vitriol. I am. I guess, like I said, I'm kind of a snowflake in some ways, and I think this stuff is fun, but I got to remind myself of what Ron said. There's nothing wrong with voicing disapproval. There's been a lot to voice, so that. But I would say my part in the shot is that, but also, I think they're doing a good job over there. I think we'll see what happens. Again, it's got to be you're going to have to win close games. We'll see where that goes.
The idea that fans have a right, we have ownership over this program. I want to take this in a little different direction, and I'm going to show this tweet. And this was from KETV about a week ago, and it was just some article they had or some story on cash bonuses offered to UNL athletes for passing classes. This gets into, and we talked about this 3 years ago when all the NIL stuff was even starting to be discussed. It's like, how does that start to change the narrative in the discussion here? For the longest time, you can't say this about kids. Well, geez, are they kids? They're getting paid to have good grades. They're getting paid for NIL. They're getting paid for all this. Is now, does that make them? Does that give you more right to do something? Or is what Chancellor said, some of these guys, this is their first game at Memorial Stadium, and you shouldn't have to fight adversity from your own fans, or should you have to? Rob, you're raising your hand there.
Yeah, man. I have been fans of some terrible teams for my entire life. All right. And
by choice, Rob.
And yeah. And I mean, and let me just say this, Dave, without the interruption, please. The Raiders, the Warriors, the A's, the Sharks, Nebraska football. Now, I have been watching some terrible sports for the last 30 years combined with all those teams before the Warriors were winning championships. I saw the A's win a World Series in '89. And I've seen them field some of the worst teams in baseball over the years. And I've seen them not win a playoff game. You know what I've never seen at any of those games or heard on television? I've never once heard the fan bases boo those teams. All right. And those are professional athletes. Those are guys getting paid millions of dollars to play. I have never been to a game where I've heard people booing those teams off of the field, regardless of how bad they were. And
I have trouble believing that.
I know, and I can, but
I really do.
Good. You find the video of it. You find the video.
I'm not even going to look.
I'm just saying. I have never heard the teams do. Actually, on the very last game when the Raiders played in Oakland, the fans there, even though they were angry that the team was leaving to Las Vegas, they still showed up en masse to that game and cheered them every single minute on and off the field, and cheered them when they lost. But again, so booing a bunch of college kids isn't an emotional thing, Dave. And
you're comparing apples to oranges there. That was an end of season scenario where they're leaving the town. They came out to. My point is, even in that scenario, they weren't booing that they were leaving. Fans were angry that they were leaving, Dave. It was, I mean, you're not on those message boards. You're not on their Twitter. You're not following how angry people were. I get that. And my point is it's not okay. It's you go to these games, you do that. These are kids. I don't care if they're getting paid or not. They're 18 to 22, 23 years old. Right. They're out there doing the best they can. They're also going to school, trying to get an education, whether they're being paid or not. You know what? Do some of these other students want me to show up at Chipotle when they're working on the weekends for their part-time job and my burrito isn't right? Am I going to walk in and start booing them? If you got bad customer service, you might complain.
I might go in and but that's more constructive than walking in and booing them while they're at their job behind the counter.
I think what Sipple is talking about when he's talking with Ron Brown there, and the idea of booing is that 78,000 or 85,000 can't walk in and give their individual complaints like you can at Chipotle, but what they can do is they can boo. Now the question still falls back on should they, or when should you be able to? I mean, looking back on it, this team is a young team and they're getting it turned around. We're going to talk about that a little bit later with scoring explosion and throwing the bones. Is that, this team needs support right now. And one of the things that bothers me a little bit with some of the things I've seen is, and you saw it a week ago with Urban Meyer is going to be our next head coach, Dave. Did you hear that? And there's people rooting for this stuff almost already. And I'm like, we're one game into the season and people are already rooting for this thing to be over and move. Some people, let me be very clear. Some are rooting for that almost like it's, I want this thing to end. And I'm sitting here going, I'm battling every week as a fan right now is I want us to get better and I want us to win this next week's game. And then let's have a huge, turnout with Oklahoma coming here and let's win more games. And so as a fan, how do we help? What is our role to help, try to promote that? I also want to show this real quick. And this is, again, I want to be very clear that, being critical isn't something that's anti-Nebraska. Back in 2005, Scott Frost had a blog that he did, Scott's Thoughts by Scott Frost. And it was a long blog. It was written after the 2005 loss to Kansas, our first loss to Kansas since 1968. At that point, we were 5-4 in the season. It was the second year of Callahan. The first year of Callahan, they had a losing record, the first losing record since pre-Devaney, 1961. So we're 5-4 coming off of a losing season. And we just lost to Kansas. We went on, after this blog was written, we went on to win the last two games, K-State and Colorado. Made it to the Alamo Bowl, beat Michigan, ended up 8-4. There was a lot of things that Frost was critical about. I think constructive criticism in a lot of ways. But I want to read this thing. It's 4 paragraphs, but just let me read it here. He goes, building on this point, I'd like to add this. It's not fair to be calling for the firing of any of our coaches right now. Everyone's entitled to their opinions about how the things are going on the field, but we owe these guys a fair chance to get things turned around. If I was a coach that took over a program like Nebraska, I would feel like I deserved at least 3 or 4 years to fully integrate my philosophies and tactics as a coach and leader. Granted, these granted, there probably needs to be signs of improvement along the way, but it's not fair to be talking about a change right now. It also doesn't make sense to be firing so many arrows at the staff in the middle of the season. These guys have a job to do, and the fewer distractions they have, the better they will perform. On top of that, we don't want the players feeling like they're in the midst of a firestorm. We don't want them worried that they might have a new coach in a year or 2 or 3. I've heard rumors that some of our vaunted freshmen are kicking around the idea of transferring. We can't lose these kids. Whoever is coaching needs talented players. There's a time and a place for everything. If things haven't improved by the end of the 06 season, then maybe people should voice their opinions on who is the right person to lead our program, but not right now. Now is the time that we should be supporting our team and our players so that they understand that they're part of something special. That's Frost after talking about, he was very critical and a lot of it prior to that point. He was very critical of a lot of the changes that were made that had nothing to do with Callahan, that had to do with Steve Peterson and changes of the Nebraska way. But that was his take there as a ex-player and as a fan of what he wanted to see. And right now, there's so many things that are true there. I know as I read that, there's going to be some people that will listen to that, and especially the ones that wanted Frost gone 10 months ago and they still want him gone now. They'll sit there and say, well, he got his 3 or 4 years. I get it. A decision was made last year by Trev to keep Frost. Frost made a lot of changes. We have a lot of new coaches in there. There's a lot of moving parts. We talked earlier about Whipple and Frost and how are they going to get together. Nobody thought that was just going to be a perfect thing on game one. It's going to take a little time. And as fans, I guess the way I'm going to fan, I'm not going to tell anyone else how to do it. That's not my business, and they don't need to listen to me anyways. I'm going to be patient here, as patient as I can publicly. I'll still text you guys during the game and say, damn it, we needed to run the ball. I will always do that until the day I'm dead. But that's different than vocalizing and going online and saying wrong things about players. And if I ever write something that requires a parent of a player to ever have to come out and defend something that I said, then that to me, that's the line of destructive and constructive right away. I mean, that's easy.
I hear you, Honk. And I'm clear. I mean, I think the booing at the end of the half this week, I don't think it was directed at any one player for certain. And in fact, it was probably directed at the coaching staff and Frost in particular, because they went through a process of calling all their timeouts to try to get the ball back and ended up only leaving themselves 13 seconds because they couldn't get off the field. And then, it felt like that was a very fruitless effort there. They could have time managed a lot better. And I think that's where the boos were at. Right. I mean, it's all a certain set of degrees there. So
the crazy thing is that the boos and Boomer, I'm kind of curious. I think you've been putting up some of the comments, but I'd love if there's some more comments to put them up there or read some of the ones, but I'm not, honestly, the booing part doesn't necessarily bother me as much as some other things. I mean, the straight up call outs on social media and the just the vitriol that you see on some of the message boards. Booing is, to me, almost a more universal, it seems like every place does it. Maybe Rob, maybe the Oakland fans have been wonderful over the years, and you know what, I take it
like
so many
Oakland Raiders fans are known for being wonderful. So yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, whatever. But I do take it back, because after the TV did go off, they did boo Derek Carr walking off the field in Oakland after the game. So I do take that back. So apparently they did. I don't remember seeing that on TV, but I did look it up. But yeah, regardless, screw you and your Raider fan hate, because Broncos
in a perfect world, I would prefer we don't boo, right? But to Dave's point too, in a perfect world, I would prefer it's not 7-7 at half, and that we're not calling time. I get the frustration from fans, I really do. But one thing with that THINK is, what you're doing, is it helpful? That's one. I do think the role of a fan ideally should be to try to help the program out. And if you're doing something that is turning away recruits, that to Chancellor Brewington, it's the reason I wanted to play his audio, is that this is the perspective of a player, and it's just one player. That you could ask another player on the team, and that player maybe is like, I don't care.
Garrett Nelson might have a completely different perspective.
Yes. So I don't play Chancellor Brewington's audio to say that's the end all be all. This is what this one guy thought. No, I mean, he's just one of 150 players, but it is just, as a fan, the think thing, I think, matters. And or what you're saying, is it true? We went back and retracted something about Pat Fitzgerald. I mean, I don't even care about Pat Fitzgerald, but if I said it wrong last week and I said a quote that he didn't say, apparently, then I didn't say something true. Is it true? Is it helpful? And as a fan, I want to do things, and I want the show to try to do things that is about being helpful to the program. Ideally, I mean, we all want to win. That's the one thing. Realist, optimist. I don't care. I've talked to so many different Husker fans. We all do want the team to win. It's people are just frustrated. And I think to Ron Brown's point there, especially as long as we've been frustrated, for Christ's sakes, I mean, it's amazing we keep showing up to do this in some ways.
That was a question I had. Is it, I mean, again, I'm not saying we should be booing teams at halftime, but is leaving better than that or worse in your guys?
Yeah, look at UCLA. They just don't show up.
Yeah, they either don't show up or, like I said, I've been to a lot of games where the fans just gave up at halftime and left. I mean, and that stadium was very empty towards the fourth quarter. God, I remember one game I was against Ohio State. It was cold. We were getting smoked, and I basically was given free rein to wander Memorial Stadium because I was like one of like 6 people left.
Yeah.
And the guards stopped caring. They just, you can go wherever you want. It's kind of fun. Is that better or worse? I don't know.
And Boomer, what do you think about the NIL / all the money discussion? Does that change the game? I mean, now are they
that adds a whole new element to this, especially if we start considering how collectives work and that they're asking fans to contribute to it. So if I, as a fan, am paying money that is going directly to some of these players, I could certainly see some fans then saying, yes, I have a right to voice displeasure at this performance since I'm essentially paying for it now at this point. So that's a whole new wrinkle to this, and I don't know. Again, I don't boo anybody in particular, but I could see fans taking that approach now, just with NIL and the fact they're paying for it now.
Yeah, the voice. I think that's a good point. That we have the right to voice displeasure. I think we don't have the right to go out and type whatever we want and say whatever we want, and make up things about players and threaten players. And my goodness, I don't know if I can find I don't think I have the graphic up here anymore. I put so many in there, but one of them was, this isn't just a Nebraska thing. Last night, LSU, after that, there's someone within the department. She wrote a tweet about the players' mental health that really took off. And, there's, again, when you lose games, you get people that are going to be attacking you from all over the place. And there's things that I think you have the right to do as fans, and there's things I don't think you have the right to do. And if I really have to explain the difference between that, that's probably more on the other person. I'm not going to go that deep.
Is booing opponents okay?
Well, is booing refs okay? I mean, I've booed refs.
I boo refs all the time.
All the time, right?
I'm going to go off on the Illinois refs here once we get to that. So,
well, I mean, you can boo toilet water all you want. I mean, referees are trash.
Well, geez, Rob.
Wow, Rob,
that was really
rough.
Really
That's rough. But
hey, man, after some of those calls this weekend, I mean, seriously, with replay, some of those calls, like, give me a break.
Okay, let's not go down that road again, Rob. That's a long one. We've got a long show ahead of us because we have not even talked about our offense or defense or the Betcast, and
you guys did a rapid reaction.
So this was. Thank you, Dave, by the way, for letting me kind of do this discussion, because it was something I wanted to get out there. And I don't know that we've come to any grand conclusions, but in general, I just say I'd like what the fan base is, when Nebraska's at its best, just across the board, the fans are such an active role, and that's in win or loss. I mean, I think of the losses like Ricky Williams, ending our 40-some game home win streak in 1998, and the Husker fans clap him off.
Merrill Hodge.
Yeah, Merrill Hodge, after the BYU first game of the Riley era, Merrill Hodge has a son on the BYU team, and that's an opportunity for fans to be at their worst. That we get beat by a Hail Mary, and he goes on to ESPN afterwards and just says the most amazing fans I've ever been around, the most amazing place. And I mean, I still get chills every time, even in losses. I get chills when I know that people say that about us. That's still something that I just think is amazing, and I hate to lose that.
I will close on that, Honky. The point is, because we recognize, Nebraska fans, in my opinion, will recognize good football wherever we're at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ricky Williams running wild on us, he was a great individual performance. I will clap my hands to that anytime.
Yeah.
The BYU game, look, they beat us fair and square. That Hail Mary is a part of the game, and they pulled it off, right? That's not bad football I watched out there, right? I'm going to clap for that, right? You just give me bad football, and then that's a whole different story, right? And I think,
Bobby Bobby Bowden till the end. He talked about how great Nebraska fans were, and he kept quoting when they beat us like in '81, how they got clapped off the field. And Abby's point there, and I've heard Abby say that before too, that we're great fans to other teams. We are great fans to other teams. That is something we are. We are great fans to Nebraska too. I mean, we show up and we cheer and we send tens of thousands of people to Dublin and man, we were great fans to Nebraska in 2019 out in Boulder. All of us, man, we were great fans. And I understand the frustration of fans that you make that one more trip. Or how many times, Dave, have we said, okay, I'm just not going to go on this game. I'm not going to do this one because I'm the reason we're losing. It's obviously
I've
me.
not seen an away victory since '95.
So we take it upon ourselves. I'm just not going to show up now because every time I show up, we lose. So it's probably my fault, and no, I'm not going to buy into that. I'm going to keep showing up. And with that hope and there's a lot of great fans. We have so many great fans. And a lot of times it's the loudest voice that is the negative one, right? And but it's that loudest voice. And maybe I think a little bit to Abby's point and to some of the other people that I've interacted with, sometimes maybe the point of reason has to be a loud voice too. A lot of times we just sit back. I'm guilty of this. We sit back and we just let it happen. And no, we're the Redcast. If we want to go out and attack an issue, we can attack an issue too. And we can call people out if they're being beyond obnoxious with it. And generally speaking, 95% of this fan base is just amazing. And sometimes it's those 5% you just got to shake your head at.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
One last final point too, and that nobody's made, is that we're coming off basically a short week for these kids. They traveled to Europe, played a game, traveled all the way back from Europe, still trying to adjust to the time. Anybody who's traveled over there knows that your clock is never right for at least like a week or so after you get back from a trip or go there. I mean, okay, you're right, Dave. I've only been there 4 times. What do I know?
Everybody's individual time clocks are different, Rob. So
okay, cool. Then thank you for agreeing with my point, is that you've got an entire team of kids that a lot of them had never even left the country before, let alone the state or the state that they lived in until they came to Nebraska. So they go through this entire travel process. They come back. They're expected to practice, play a game, have their entire heads in it. Plus they're starting school, all these other things that are going on. Now we're going to have a whole nother week where they're going to have a chance to practice, where they're going to have a chance to come out there, play a game. They're going to probably be a lot more focused, especially after coming out in that second half and playing a lot better together. So, I mean,
my only question, Rob, is that if they don't do that, if they come out and they play a really poor game and they're down by 10,
then there's no more excuses.
But then is it okay to boo then?
No.
Is that the time that it's okay then?
It's never okay.
We don't need excuses. That's my point.
You don't. It's never okay to boo.
Well, that's Rob's opinion. Not all of us agree with that. Let's move on, Honky, because
that's okay.
I think we had a good discussion on it. So,
all right, let's move on to the scoring explosion. Scoring explosion, where we talk about all things Husker offense. And we did see some offense this week with 38 points. Most of that coming in the second half. 31 points in the second half. Is that right? Oh, that's not bad, right?
No reason to boo there, man. A lot of good offense.
No. They ended the game on a high note. It took quite a while to warm up. But the run game did actually show up quite a bit there, especially in the fourth quarter. And the run pass ratio that you just brought up there, Honky, was more to our liking. That's for certain. Casey Thompson, 14 of 21, but with 41 rushing attempts, led by Anthony Grant's 23 with a big 189 yardage for Anthony Grant. Definitely showing he's RB1 there, it looks like. 2 touchdowns. A.J. Allen also having some separation as the number 2 back, although I still think that maybe Gabe Irvin or Yant or Ramir could get another shot at that. But Anthony Grant does seem to be separating there. Honky, what do you think overall about the offensive performance?
Yeah, I think it's a tale of two halves. And in my head, walking away, I had Alex with me, so I did have to leave at half. And I never leave early Only when I have Alex and I take him to one game a year. But as we were driving home, in my head, I was booing the team in my head. Not out loud, but in my head I was. I didn't like what I was seeing from the run-pass ratio, all those things. Really, the first 6 quarters, I just didn't like. And I said the same thing a week ago on this show. From a constructive standpoint, we need to be able to run the football. We need to be able to use the legs of Casey. In that second half, we see him scrambling. We see him rolling out little rolls. The touchdown pass to Chancellor Brewington. He's getting out of the pocket. It's a little play action rollout. Get him out. And then we ran an option. I'm defensive a little bit of the offensive line because I think sometimes it's so unfair what gets put on them. Look, they make mistakes, and there's times where they have individual blowups, absolutely. But there are times schematically we can be doing things to make things easier on them, rolling things out, keeping backs in the backfield and chip blocking, and not just having it be an empty backfield. Those are things that you can do to help your quarterback in the pocket, because we do have a much improved pocket awareness quarterback now with Casey. It's not even, to me, that is unquestionable. Give him a good pocket compared to Martinez, and it's night and day difference. He is comfortable sitting in there. He finds the guy. He releases it on time. And if you give him a bunch of pressure, Dave, you said it before the first game, you give him a bunch of pressure, and he's thrown off his back foot too. And so the point is, if you're going to give him a pocket, do some things to give him the best pocket you can, chip blocking, all that. And if not, use his legs, roll him out a little bit, get him moving. I think that he's going to put a lot of stress on defenses. So I think there's something that can really be built off of from that second half.
Boomer, what do you think there? I mean, there was questions about Casey's health at the end of that Northwestern game with his thumb. I didn't see anything of that nature, right? It felt like overall Thompson's healthy. They just decided to run the ball in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, that's what was working. I mean, at some point you just have to go with what's working in a game. I mean, you may draw up certain things, but if they're giving you, running with Grant, then that's what you got to go with. So, I was also slightly concerned. Thompson ran to the medical tent at one point during that game. I wasn't sure what to make of that, but he came back out and saw the field. So, no worries there. Again, it's just, I don't know what to make of this game yet. This is kind of the thing where on its own, it looked good. But again, just like my opening statement, I refer to last year, we looked good against Fordham. We struggled a little bit early and then, and we thought we established something there, and then never quite.
Fordham last year, I almost forgot that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a similar thing. We started sluggish, and Fordham was, punching hard, and then, that game was a bigger blowout than this, and North Dakota is a better team than Fordham. I don't think anyone was going to question that, but
right.
I need to see this game as part of a bigger picture. So I want to see what they do with it. Are they going to take what they learned from this game and actually do something with it? Or did this just happen to be a late game fluke where we overpowered a team where we should be overpowering a team with just the talent we have and the roster size and the fact we're at home? I don't know. So, and is this coaching staff going to take what they learned from it and do something with it? Are they going to communicate with each other or whatever it is they're supposed to be doing? And
collaborate.
That's what I want to see. Collaborate. Yeah, let's go with collaborate. So it's a possible building block, but I'm reserving judgment.
So I didn't have time to hear the presser, but Rob, obviously you listened to it today, and I think it builds off of some of our conversation in the rapid reaction on Saturday night a little bit. I mean, this question of who was calling plays in the second half, and why did the offensive philosophy become more creative in the second half? I mean, what are your takes on that, and what do you expect to see this Saturday?
Well, I mentioned it on Saturday, and I'll say it again, and I've seen some other people on social media talk about it a little bit here and there, and you saw Frost walk over to Whipple at one point during the game. There's video of it out there. People can look it up all they want. Of him, they stood next to each other. They weren't arguing. There was no there didn't seem to be any sort of discourse, anything like that. It was just basically the two of them having a conversation, nodding their heads to each other, coming to some kind of an agreement, because Frost just kind of looked at him, and then I can't remember if he patted him on the back or what he did, but then he turned around, he walked back the other way because the defense was coming on the field. I think it was right after a touchdown, and I think it was basically, in my guess, and I'm just guessing here, it was a conversation kind of like, yeah, see, if we work this with that, and we do this scheme right here and do these plays with that, this is what's going to work for us. And, obviously this is because, and it could be game to game. We might again, the run pass ratio of this game was what, 41 to 23 or 26 or something like that. And we could turn around next week easily and see it again more like Northwestern, because that's what the defense is giving us. And this week, I think that's what it turned into. Well,
no,
I'm just Northwestern was giving us. That's the problem, Rob. Right?
Absolutely not. They came out guns a-blazing and throwing. And
well, they always come out. They always come out though. Like in the 4 starting drives, Frost made that point today though. He said in our first drive in the first half and our first drive in the second half in both games, what did they do? They came out and they scored touchdowns because they seem to work really well when everything is schemed out, right? And then from that point on, I think they started doing what the defense was giving them, and that was the run.
Well, you can scheme a lot of things. Well, but no, Rob. You need.
I just went back and watched the game again, and I'm just saying it just seemed like the run was working, and so that's what they started. That's what they started going to. They ran 11 times in a row at one point.
Well, after they've had 5 turnovers in 2 games, every single turnover has come out of the passing game. 3 interceptions, a sack, that's a fumble, and then a fumble that shouldn't have been a fumble off of a catch. But for what it's worth, 5 turnovers have all come out of the passing game.
Yeah.
Now,
and 2 of those interceptions hit the receiver's hands, so you can't really put that on Thompson.
I don't care. That's the passing game. It's there's the old saying that there's 3 things that can happen on a pass, and only one of them is good. So don't tell me it's a drop. Don't tell me it's a missed block, and that's why you got sacked, and that's why you fumbled it. Don't tell me that we can't run option because a guy's going to get hurt. I don't want to run our quarterback 25 times a game, but to Boomer's point, our guy's going to the tent because he's getting hit in the pocket too. And it can be because for all the people that say the O-line's terrible, fine. It could be for that. It could be because of other reasons where we aren't chip blocking or there's a lot of things that go wrong when the pass goes wrong. We need to develop a running game, and we need to be doing it now. The earlier, the better. You're not going to develop a running game in November when you're finally playing Minnesota and those guys. You got to be developing it now. And developing the run game for us means getting the quarterback involved in it. Because we're not going to line up in double tight ends, under center with full house backfields and fullbacks. That's not our style. So we're going to do what we do. And we did some innovative look in that second half. You saw Chris.
And I don't
Hickman
disagree.
You saw Brewington out there more. You saw Manning out there more. You saw some different sets. You saw some bigger guys out there. We'll get Vokalek before the game. For a guy that hurt his ankle, Vokalek is out there doing jumping jacks with the team, which is great to see. I have no doubt that we will see Vokalek back sooner than later, and he's a big part of this offense. He's a great blocking part of it, and he's a huge target that's going to be great for Casey Thompson. I think percentage-wise, what we saw in this 41-21 today, that's a low number of plays, but if we're going to have about 80 plays, I think we're going to be best somewhere around a 50-30 kind of thing. 50 runs, 30 passes. If you were going for 80 plays, that would probably be about on any given average day, that would be a good ratio for us.
Well, and I don't disagree. I like the run. I actually think I said that on Saturday that Honky's gonna blow. I'm gonna blow his mind by saying like, oh my God, run the damn ball. I mean, if we're gonna use the run to open the pass and we pass less than we run, that's fine.
Well, but, get creative.
Yeah. I just wouldn't be surprised if most of the Big Ten teams, I agree, are good against the run. That's one thing that they are good. But also most of those teams didn't really show a whole lot of anything this weekend either. You know what I mean? Like looking at it, like how many of those Big Ten teams did you look at and go, oh my God, they're gonna kill the entire league this year? None of those teams looked very good at anything, other than maybe defense.
Iowa's
defense is good. You don't need an offense to win in the Big Ten.
Iowa was playing a team in the same league as North Dakota. You know that?
Sure.
And generally speaking, slightly better. But point taken there, Rob. Could we? I wanted to go back to Honky with the pass offense and the run and Vokalek in particular. I mean, to your point, hopefully we see Travis Vokalek back. It seems like we have a lot of tight ends in that room. The second string tight end, I'm going to mispronounce his name. Honky, can you help me with?
Are you talking about Borkircher and
Borkircher? Is that how you say it? Borkircher. Yep. It's intriguing. I mean, is he still a walk-on or is he earned a scholarship?
I don't know if he's earned the scholarship yet, but he's came here as a walk-on.
Yeah. And look, I mean, he got a touchdown pass. Looked better. He did, maybe looked a little bit trying to get up to speed in that Northwestern game when Travis Vokalek went out. But it is intriguing to me that we haven't seen Chris Hickman. We did see him a little bit in this
Yeah,
game, but I mean, like I'd be thinking from a downfield passing threat. And he's played a lot. Isn't that like Chris hasn't seen the field in the last couple of years, that he isn't on there a little bit more? Same thing. I'd love to start seeing AJ Rollins out there. It seems like we have some depth there that I'm not seeing yet. I'm a little surprised about that.
That's what you started to see some in the second half, and they're on the field. So Rollins did start to play there towards the end.
Okay.
Hickman getting
I saw
there.
Hickman. I didn't see Rollins.
And it is, I think Rob made this point earlier, and this is very important. I'm talking to myself as much as I'm talking to any Redcasters out there right now. Some of these guys are literally playing their first games of college football. A guy, we'll talk about defense later, but a guy like Colton Feast, I mean, he's been in the program for 4 years, but he's just finally playing his first games. He hasn't really played football at this level in a number of years. And Borkircher, I mean, he played very sparingly, if that, a year ago. So now they're playing meaningful minutes. So, and Borkircher was one of those guys that had a drop or two, in the Northwestern game. And if anything came out of this, you talked about Iowa and them playing South Dakota State and us playing North Dakota. If nothing else came out of this, I really wish this was our first game last week.
Yeah.
I wish we didn't, looking back on it now, I wish we didn't go to Ireland, only for the sense that with all the change that happened this offseason with the roster and the coaching staff,
could have used a game.
Could have used a game like this, because that's the thing with Iowa. They win 7-3 in the ugliest way you can. They have to score 3 times to get 7, but they win the game, and they're going to be better for it. Now they're fixing things in practice this week and getting a couple guys healthy, and they'll show up and play Iowa State, and they'll probably beat them 35-10. They probably will. And the most important thing for Iowa that came out of that day was they were 1-0. For us, the same thing could have been said. The most important thing is we come out of that game 1-0. And the problem is that, we came out of that day 1-0, but we had the one loss hanging on us already from the week before. And we don't know how good Northwestern's going to be or not be. Northwestern might win the darn West again, and at the end of the season, we're looking at a 3-point loss to the West champs. Who knows? We don't know that yet, but it's so early. I just wish, that I think that game, I'm hoping this is my scarlet colored glasses, Dave. This is me crossing the fingers. I think that they saw some things that started to work, and I'm like, you can build off of this. We're going to get to defense, so I don't even want to get into the blitzes and the man-to-man stuff. But on offense, the things we did with Casey, some of the personnel groups that they were doing, they were different than what we saw a lot of the first 6 quarters. So maybe we're starting to see them figure some things out.
Yeah, I hear you. Hey, remind me, I'm just thinking through the offensive performance, and I think we talked about this a little bit in the rapid reaction. Maybe our listeners can go back and listen to that, but I think it was a good conversation about having kind of playmakers at every different kind of position group. Last year, there was a coach or a player who mentioned, like, hey, we just knew we had to stop Adrian Martinez. We need to stop number 2, and we didn't have anybody else to worry about. Remember that? Or was it a couple of years ago? I don't know who that was, but there was a quote saying, like, hey, look, Adrian Martinez is how that drink is stirred at Nebraska, and if you can stop Adrian, you're going to win the game. It does feel like I'd love to see this offense continue to evolve, and that there's some individual performances where in some game Casey Thompson does just kind of take over and have a great game like he did versus Oklahoma while he was at Texas. But you see Trey Palmer may have that potential in him to kind of take over a game. We've already seen Anthony Grant starting to do that. You could claim he took over the game there in the fourth quarter.
Co-offensive player of the Big Ten this week.
Yeah, you could see Travis Vokalek potentially do that as a tight end position. Maybe defensively, someone like Garrett Nelson could do that, or O'Shawn. It'd be awesome to start seeing those things happen where you see a lot more depth of the dudes that kind of can really make a difference, really make their imprint. I think they make a big difference on the perception of the program if we go in a few games with individuals really leading the way different each time,
Mm-hmm. Rob, I want to apologize to you earlier about the passing stuff. I feel like I attacked you there, and I didn't mean to do that. I want to see from the beginning of the game, what I'd really want to see is Casey, even if we threw the ball 6 times on the opening drive, but he's rolling out and moving the pocket kind of thing. That what was so unimaginative for 6 quarters was pocket passes or a handoff, just straight handoff.
Yep.
And really, quite honestly, not very good fakes even.
I mean, that's
carried
not
out
good.
after
That's not good football, no matter what level you're on.
It really was. It was, and it was almost like it was safe, and it was like, let's not make the mistake. Maybe that's the case. I don't know, but to me, what we started to see in that fourth quarter, kind of with their backs against the wall, where it's like, you got to, Rob, you said it perfect on the rapid reaction. When they tied it up at 17-17, this season is on the brink. This team is either going to fold and this is it, or boom, they came around with 21 straight points, pushing the ball down the field and doing the things that they needed to do. So they took the right route of the two. And I think with their backs against the wall a little bit, we saw them do some things and open some things up that maybe they thought they didn't have to do against Northwestern or North Dakota. I don't care. These are things we're going to have to do against everybody. There's just nobody on the schedule is irrelevant to me right now. We've got to figure some things out that are going to work for us and then just do them. Let's get good at what we do. Don't worry about who we play. Just get good at what we do.
Yeah, yep, and I hope this weekend that we have that opportunity. I know. Are we going to talk about the Georgia Southern team here coming up? Because that's something that, I mean, even
we'll get into it a little bit.
In a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, defensively, I mean, what Georgia Southern does, do we have a bit of a preview there?
I don't know personally. I know from an offensive standpoint, they have the same quarterback that Buffalo had last year.
Had a year ago.
So a lot of that was actually brought up in the presser today too to one of the players, and he basically said, that it's basically, to sum it up, and this isn't a quote at all, but it was basically like, we know what this guy can do and what he looks like out there on the field. So in some ways that can help us from a defensive standpoint, right?
Yeah, we can talk about
we'll get to that, and we'll get to
defense. But I mean, offense. They are Georgia Southern last weekend, so they played a game. They beat
Morgan State.
Morgan State. What was the score there, Boomer?
Yeah, it was a lot. It was
a lot to little.
59-7.
Okay, so they
were very pass happy in that game. So it's a change from the typical.
They set all kinds of records or something in that for the school.
They've been a running offense for decades. So
they had Paul Johnson, and they were kind of a triple option team for the longest time.
They
and
have Clay Helton
taken over and completely flipped it. So,
well, Dave, let's go to throwing the bones in. Let's talk about what we're going to see there.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about all things Husker defense with throwing the bones and recap a little bit of what we saw at Northwestern and what we can expect this Saturday. Go ahead, Rem.
I said I don't want to talk about Northwestern. I want to talk about.
Oh, I'm sorry, I said Northwestern. I apologize.
I mean North.
I'm not used to. We never do previews on this show, so my head is around the fact that I did not look up the Georgia Southern team in Phil Still, and I apologize to Honky because I told him I was going to do that, and I didn't do it. So I have nothing on them besides what I tweeted to you or texted to you.
I would never want to be on a group project with you, Dave. Jeez.
Yeah, I know. This happens to be a hobby instead of a job. But throwing the bone. So I should have.
So Clay Helton, they're going to throw the ball more than what they have traditionally done in the past. And
by 100-fold. It's not even close. It's a massive transition. I mean, I have no idea what Morgan State showed them, but I mean, you're talking about an offense that for the last 3 decades has been a triple option, except for a few minor exceptions with coaches that didn't last very long. And to switch over to a West Coast offense is quite dramatic. So it's hard to read what that actually tells us, how they got to 50-some points last week against Morgan State, because you wouldn't think they would have the personnel packages, even with transfers in like the Buffalo quarterback, to be that effective of a West Coast team or passing team in general compared to what their personnel has been for a long time. Yeah, I mean, we can talk more about Georgia Southern, but I don't know who else knows anything more about that team. But I mean, we do have a game to react to a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, defense for us, if let's say they're going to come out and throw the ball a whole bunch against us, right? What did we start to see different? Again, kind of, this is a tale of 6 quarters and then the last 2 on both sides of the ball. In those first 6 quarters, didn't have a sack through 6 quarters, and you saw. I'm not going to call it passive with the rush, but but a lot of zone defense. It was something I brought up a week ago. A lot of times where we would get a team into 3rd and 12, 3rd and long, and they complete a pass in front of our guy, and our guy's either flat-footed and the guy is standing there in a zone, and the guy catches it and then runs and gets the first down, or the tackling. And the tackling, it still needs to get much better. I mean, it's been really rough through 2 games, and the amount of times that we've missed that first tackle and then a guy goes off and gets yards after contact, they've extended so many drives, both Northwestern and North Dakota. So we've done the hard work. You get yourself to 3rd and 12, and the reward should be Big Mac sack attacks. Then that should be the reward. And instead, those first 6 quarters, you'd see a lot of the zone. Now, by the end of that game, that knockdown that was that held him to a field goal right in the end zone, that knockdown, that's man-to-man, guys right draped on him. The last play of the game for them, where it's it'd be Hill, a couple plays after he got that one, as you said, Dave, kind of the silly holding penalty. He didn't really need to. He had really solid coverage there. We've got some gamers. We've got some athletes in that backfield. It's time to, I think, let them loose and let them cover. And, if we're concerned that Georgia Southern's receivers are going to, just fly by us one-on-one, I mean, we're going to have bigger troubles down the road. So we've got to have some trust in those guys and let Nelson loose, let Mathis loose, let Tanner loose. We started to see those guys in the backfield a little bit more, got 2 sacks in the second half, and that changed the game for us too.
Yeah, absolutely. Honky, looks like we've got it. Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, I was going to say one of the things about their offense, though, that if we're looking at that too, is that they do spread the ball out a lot to the receivers. It looks like he completed 367 yards of passing they had, and to 10 different receivers. It looks like here, so they spread the ball out a lot to the and so that's a lot, and so there's going to be a lot of different looks, I'm guessing, from those receivers, because I think they ran the ball. It was like a 46-31 run pass to run ratio for them. So, and most of their rushes look like they came from pretty close. They had 4 rushing touchdowns, but I think they were all pretty close to the goal line.
So Honky, you have this tweet up here with do you walk away from yesterday's 21-point victory, North Dakota, more or less optimistic? 66% has less. And then Husker Nut talks about the tackling has been terrible for 2 weeks in a row now. I mean, how can they turn the table, or turn the story around, I guess, on the tackling? I mean, it feels like this is something that they need to practice with some physicality to get that fixed, and they're going to need to get it fixed soon before Oklahoma comes to town, because they are going to have playmakers that can expose you in spaces. So,
thanks to all the Redcasters that voted on that poll, and we had like 2,500 votes and a ton of responses, and a lot of really good responses there. More and less, positive and negative on what they've seen. With the tackling, it is one of those things. I think our response to Husker Nut there was, look, we got to get it fixed and fixed soon, because when you have a team like Oklahoma coming in here, if we miss that first tackle, those guys are going to be taking those plays to the house. And, I haven't been at practice all fall camp, so I don't know. Obviously, Quentin Newsom, I think, said after the Northwestern game that they didn't do as much tackling, and some of that's to try to be preventative injuries. And I totally get it. But at the end of the day, you have to play football. You have to practice football, and injuries, unfortunately, are sometimes a part of that. And I know we love to, green jersey everybody, but you're going to eventually have to tackle somebody in a game, and the best way to do that is get there into the practice. Now, for what it's worth, what came out of press conference today was that Frost, and this feels like CEO out of him, is that they came out, we're doing more one-on-ones now, 1 versus 1s in practice now this week. And it's that need of, we have to be, and Abby said that right there too. That's a great point, Abby, that the 1s versus 1s, I mean, you got to get good on good. You risk an injury, and I get that, but practice has to make you better, and you can't get better at something like tackling if you don't tackle and full speed tackle at times, because that's what's happening in these games. They'll throw a quick out, and we have a one-on-one guy out there, and darts right by and he's hitting with the wrong shoulder or whatever. And we've missed so many countless ones like that. The yards after contact on some of these receptions that Northwestern and North Dakota had against us that has to get better. And so hopefully it gets better with just rep after rep after rep. And we did, again, I sound like a broken record here. The amount of young guys getting their first place. And I don't mean that in the sense that I realize the other team can say the same thing too. I'm sure North Dakota had young guys catching balls. I'm sure Northwestern did too. But I'm just saying from our perspective, that was Ernest Hausman out there starting and playing so many downs. And he'd miss a tackle here or there, but man, he'd make a tackle too. And it's like you see all the potential. And it's like, yeah, he's one of those guys. I want to build that guy up. I don't want to boo him when he misses a tackle. I want to build that guy up because that guy's going to play a lot of good football for us for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, it was great to see him out there. It's very cool to have a Columbus High alum out there starting for Nebraska as a true freshman. I think I did see, and I always pronounce Kolarevich incorrectly. Boomer, how do you actually say his last name?
Kolarvik, I think is
Kolarvik.
Yeah, go with that.
Out there maybe a little bit more in the linebacker position later in the game. But yeah, the depth is still concerning. And against Oklahoma, it's good to get Ernest Hausman reps now, because if he's gonna have to play that much versus Oklahoma, he needs every rep he can get. And that's tough to throw a true freshman in right there. Hopefully Heinrich is healthy and back at him.
Are you saying what did Kolarvik come in and play some middle, like inside linebacker then?
It might have been. I don't think it was Clements, but I thought Kolarvik's 31. I thought I saw him eventually playing inside linebacker.
And I'd have to watch some of that at the end. And the reason I think that's important is that we saw some Phelan Sanford at the end and making tackles.
And that might have been him. That might have been him too. It's a good question.
And he was playing some at the Nick spot. So, along with Gifford, and Gifford's the starter, but they might have, this guy might be the Nick spot on some run plays. And then this guy's more of a defensive back Nick. I mean, I don't know how they exactly split that up, but to your point, we need some of the inside depth until Nick Henrich gets back. And I don't know what his timetable is. It looked like he had something on his wrist. So I'm guessing that's what obviously that injury was. And hopefully he's back by this weekend or certainly by Oklahoma. Reimers. Look, we've seen some missed tackles. We've also seen guys go into the same gap in some plays. There's been just some communication things. I don't want to overreact to this yet, but I have all the confidence in Shenander to get this defense moving. Okay. I mean, I think he's earned that right. He's built some good defenses now for us. So last year's defense, certainly. So I think they're going to get it corrected, but yeah, it's one of those things that we need to see market improvement this week. And I really thought we saw improvement as the game went on. That's and they fundamentally were doing some things different in the second half, a lot more man-to-man than what we were seeing in the first. And that's in the first 6 quarters. And that's, again, these are the takeaways that I hope we see right away. I hope those takeaways lead to 60 minutes of consistent good football, leads us to a comfortable victory, and maybe we can empty the bench this week, which we didn't get to do last week. If that happens, I'm a pretty happy 2-1 at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Boomer, we could wrap up a little bit here with talking about special teams, because we did have some highlights there. A blocked punt for the first time in probably a while, and a 46-yard field goal made, and some good punting again, right?
Yeah, once again, special teams haven't been the dumpster fire that they'd been for the last few seasons. So it's kind of that element of the team where if you don't have to talk about them, you're in good shape. So outside of the breaking a punt return or a kickoff or a touchdown, but if you're not talking about them, then you're all right. I mean, again, we can look back last night. If you're LSU, I mean, you can see what special teams can just about destroy your entire game, and they tried to do it twice in the last couple of minutes of that game. So far so good. So, yeah.
Very true. Very true. All right, guys. Well, before we get to the Betcast, Honky, I'm sure you have a parting shot here, and I bring this up. It was really cool to see photographs of Alex Honky there with Will Compton at the pregame, throwing the bones and praying for Husker victory, apparently. I got to ask also, I was talking to my wife and she mentioned there was, video of Will playing the in the band, right? I guess that was the beginning of the fourth quarter, and it was something to do with Timmy Trumpet and this the song that was viral on the internet about the Mets closer. Boomer, do you have a backstory on this at all?
The backstory of the song is Narco. It's kind of a collaboration between DJ Blaster Jackson and Timmy Trumpet, an Australian DJ. He likes playing the trumpet live, mixing some kind of Latin jazz elements into his music, and it's just been a popular song. Like I said, Edwin Diaz has been using it for a few years as a closer, and it's kind of got that fun trumpet sound to it. So why the heck not? I mean,
we've been a big fan of brass band, and
yeah, as a Whalers fan, Brass Bonanza was always a classic, and so why not throw it in?
Herb Alpert. We're big Herb Alpert for years.
Enjoy that too.
It could be
heck, we stole Sirius from the Bulls before. Why not steal somebody else's song? So let's do it.
It could be something too that could become maybe a fourth quarter. It was in between the third and fourth quarter, and it could be one of those things that could be done during the daytime, because that's the whole thing with Thunderstruck. You're really limited. Like this weekend, we envision with a night game that we'll see Thunderstruck being played going into the fourth quarter. But obviously. It's hard to do that in the middle of the day. So this could be that. I don't know. And it was really cool. I mean, he was up there and going back and forth with the band behind him. It was funny. But from my perspective here, and my parting shot is just it was really cool. It was also my hot take at the very beginning. Will did. I mean, he had there was 50 or 60 college kids all around him, and it was just going line after line. Everyone wanted photos with him. And that dude, he didn't turn anyone down. And then I get Alex up to them, and he just gets right down to Alex's level, same height there. And he goes, "Hey, little buddy, let's say a prayer." And they do that. And I say, "Hey, throw the bones." And they threw the bones, and it was just really cool. So a great experience. It was, I knew that game wasn't going to be a 4-quarter game for me at the stadium with Alex, but if I could get him even to halftime, I almost did. I got him through halfway through the second quarter. Huge progress, and I look forward to keep taking him in future years. So a lot of fun there. Looking forward to watching the Betcast, guys.
The Betcast Picks of the Week.
All right, here we go, guys. Betcast segment of the Redcast, and it was not a glorious weekend for at least three of us. I took Skip's advice and took Tulsa, and they had that game for a while, but ultimately lost to Wyoming in overtime. Boomer, it was too good to be true. Illinois lost Indiana. I knew that line stunk, and sure enough, there it is. And I probably overthought my Colorado State at Michigan over at 61.5. I did get to 58, but I probably should have just simply took the Michigan cover at around 30-some points, because that would have been quite easy. But Rob, keeping it simple, keeping it basic, taking the Horned Frogs to cover 2 touchdowns to Colorado. I did take that as well, and it landed. Yeah, it felt pretty good, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, living in Colorado, one of the things that you really get to hear is zero talk about the Colorado Buffs, and they're
true.
I hear more radio chatter on the UNC Bears and CSU football up here in Northern Colorado than I do the CU Buffs. And the fact of the matter, they're just not a good football team, and they might almost be my Kansas for the year, right? As far as taking them on a lot of different bets, because I really don't see them winning more than 2 or 3 games, maybe the entire season. So, and when I saw TCU too, I knew TCU is a Big 12 team, right? So, I mean, they're not going to come out here, and they're not going to come out here and be trash. And they're always kind of a decent team. So I didn't see it. 2 touchdowns. I mean, give it to me all day against Colorado. So.
Yeah, it did seem like that was a low number, and you found some value there, obviously.
Yeah. I will say though, I was really surprised at the Wyoming game, and the only reason that I stayed away from that one at all this weekend was because in Wyoming, that altitude for any team, especially a team like Tulsa, coming from is Tulsa like below sea level at this point? I don't even know anymore. I'm not sure with all the fracking that goes on in Oklahoma. They
probably
may have
around
lowered about
20 plus or minus.
Yeah, but I mean, so that's a big change for them, and especially this early in the season when teams are still getting game conditioned, right? Maintaining 4 quarters up there in Wyoming is not going to be easy for anybody. I was just surprised because Wyoming just was not a good team the week before. I think they generated like 46 yards of offense or some crazy thing in one half, but somehow they managed to pull this one out. They scored 40 points against Tulsa, which
they had 2 overtimes. They also had, I believe, a pick six, or it was a scoop and score, like one of the very first plays of the game. They went up 7-0 right off the bat, and that 7 points mattered because ultimately Tulsa had taken the lead and led for most of the second half, but ultimately went to overtime and lost there. Last week, the week before, we were much better. Rob now 2-0 with the first 2 weeks of the season. I did win my first week game as well as Boomer. Producer Skip, who's the best gambler of the bunch, actually. Sometimes it's tough to pick your best bet, right? I mean, it doesn't mean you didn't have a successful week. I won a bunch of other games out there last week. I'm going to win tonight, it looks like, but I didn't pick the right one, right? And so it is always a challenge, but that's the beauty of something like the Betcast Pick'em. I want to plug that one more time before we start breaking down the games, is that you have your 2 lowest weeks are thrown out here, and there's a lot of games to pick. So it's not just one bet that you're trying to win off of, like what we do with our best bets. You'll probably have 15 to 25 games to pick each week. So make sure you sign up for our Go Big Redcast Best Bets College Football Pick'em. Group ID is 5209. Password's Betcast. All right, guys, what do you got? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, though, while we're on the subject of that, too, if you want to know, Dave, looking at like the first week's results, Boomer actually had the best results on the Pick'em this week with 17 points. And after that is myself, and then with 16, and then you had 15, and Skip is down there in 14 points for the week. So that one may actually end up getting eliminated for Skip in the long run, because it could be one of his worst 2 weeks over the season. But somebody got 20 points on that, which means they picked 20 games right. So good job,
against the spread. That's
against the spread. Good job, Dougie's picks. I hope you made thousands of dollars on those two. I hope, if betting is legal wherever it is that you live. How's that? So.
Yep. And I would also say my best bets of the week would be good if Big Ten refs were all competent and could view a screen and see what happened in a game. I'm still furious about that one. I mean, for the love of God, that was a...
Oh, sure. You say it and nobody says anything. I call them toilet water and everybody...
I'm turning into on the Betcast. This is where I can boo. There's money at stake here, Rob. So this is where I can actually say something. I mean, that was a terrible call. There wasn't anybody who watched that game that didn't think that was a touchdown, and they blew that. And that would have completely changed that entire game. It's 4 points they lost. They probably would have kicked the field goal when it was 4th and 1 there, so it should have been up 7, and that was 7 extra points Illinois should have had, and that should have been a win. And plus, the other smashing pumpkins moment of that game was, when I texted you guys earlier, it was I wanted to make a World is So Dark pick and pick Florida as my best bet of the week.
You should have.
I know I should have. I had it out there. I dangled it and pulled it back at the last minute. Damn it!
Your World is So Dark picks almost always come true.
I know they do, and I don't want them to. It's a power I don't want to have, Dave. That's the worst part about it.
I mean, you pretty much just take the SEC to win, and that's usually probably a pretty good bet.
It's a cross-eyed bear, and I should, do it more often, but I don't. I just wish something else would happen, and it never does.
So far, I've heard you mention like Smashing Pumpkins and an Alanis Morissette lyric in a matter of 30 seconds. So
yeah, we're going very 90s kind of, quasi.
Forever, I thought it was a cross-eyed bear that he gave to her, but apparently it's
maybe it was. I don't know. A grizzly that's just really confused.
Well,
just like there's a bathroom on the right. Yes.
Of the 90s, Texas was not bad in the 90s, and one of the big games this week, early on Saturday morning, at least here in Colorado, is Alabama visiting Austin, and Alabama, I think, is minus 20 right now on the road in Austin. I got this bet last night at minus 19.5. It opened up at 18.5, I think. Boomer, you have any interest in grabbing Alabama while it's still under 21?
As soon as I saw that 19.5, if you're not taking Bama at this point, I don't know why you wouldn't. It's hard to have a ton of faith in Texas. They're early. You don't know a lot about this coaching staff, what they're going to do, and Bama covers that stuff so easily. That's a 20-some point win, I think, for Bama just at this point. So, and Saban gets that elusive third win on the road. So, yeah.
Yep. And take Bama to cover the first half spread.
Yeah, Rob, you like that money that I gave you last week?
You know what's funny is that I'm actually building some cornhole boards for the Redcast, and one of our friends of the show, Shane and Laura over at Smack and Smooch, and so I spent all day Saturday building cornhole boards, and I didn't put any money down this weekend at all.
So normally, you did not make money on the Alabama first half, which covered easily as usual.
I did not, and. Yeah, I had a lot more stuff going on this week. I was trying, I'm coming to Lincoln this weekend. I'm leaving on Thursday. I have a lot of stuff to get done, and I neglected of all the things that I had on my list to do. That was probably near the bottom of it.
All right, well, let's get back to the bet casting here. And I'll throw one more game out, and then I'll throw it to Boomer and Rob. I've got several others I want to talk about, but Rob, you mentioned Colorado might be in your Kansas this year. They are at Air Force in Colorado Springs, down at the academy. This number's around 17 right now. I don't know where it's going to go, but I think Air Force is a Mountain West contender, and Colorado may not win more than 2 games at best this year. Kind of like the Falcons to cover that 17 points.
Yeah, the only thing that worries me on that game, and it's funny because the only thing that worries me on that game is how much Air Force runs the ball, right? So they're not going to have as much, we'll say. I mean, they have the same amount of clock, obviously, but they're going to be running the clock a lot as usual. So it'll be 17 points is a lot for a team that runs the ball a lot. I don't know what their average.
I just don't think Colorado's going to score that much.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. You know, that's fair. At least they will have probably a good fan base there. At least it's only right down the road in Colorado Springs from Boulder.
Colorado, there's not that many CU fans going to be down there.
You don't think so?
No. They barely show up to their own stadium.
God, Dave, you stole my joke from me. God.
I mean, come on. Give me a break.
Yeah, that's a very and if you've ever tried to go down I-25 to get to an Air Force game before, I mean, you're basically sitting in traffic until halfway through the game. It's like you're in Los Angeles going to a Dodgers game or something.
Well, there you go.
All right. I know that it just worries me because they run. They run the ball so much. The game that I'm interested in is the Iowa State game. This week.
Dang it, Rob, you're stealing my game.
Well, and that's okay.
So are you talking about the under at 41.5?
I
am talking about the under 41.5, and I actually
super low.
I know.
That's an academy under, Rob.
How many safeties is that, Dave?
Yeah, that's the point, is that Iowa could win this game and still not see the end zone. I think we already know that. So I mean, this could be another, 4-inning baseball game. I think Honky.
I hear you. It could be an overreaction. I get it. If that goes up, that number goes up to like 44, I'd be interested in taking it. But I just think 41.5 is awfully low. Boomer, you thinking about taking the under though?
I don't even think I was taking the under. I think I'm taking Iowa State in that game.
Yeah,
I mean, do you see like Iowa making huge offensive improvements?
They do this, to Honky's point, they do this all the time, guys. They look like trash one week, and then they turn around and they'll middle around and win this game 24 to 13 or something like that.
What?
Well, yeah, but 3 of those touchdowns are going to be. Yeah, there'll be 3 defensive touchdowns though.
Well, so it doesn't matter. They still.
I know it doesn't. I know it doesn't matter, but I just. Yeah.
I mean, Matt Campbell is due. I mean, if you want to take the philosophy of like the ups and downs here, everybody thought that Iowa State was going to be the better team last year. It didn't happen. And Iowa continued their streak. Matt Campbell's yet to beat Iowa. This would be the type of year where he does it with a completely different cast and you didn't expect it. So I get it. I might just stay away from this one, but it's an intriguing game.
I mean, a 3.5-point spread in Iowa City, against Iowa State, which is a natural rival game. A 3.5-point spread is like Vegas saying like,
neutral site in Des Moines, this would be a pick'em.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, in Des Moines, neutral site in Des Moines. That's funny. But I mean, this is again, I probably would stay away from it too. But it's still an interesting game. I hope we get a chance to watch it. But it's going to be on right before it does. It's going to be on before the Husker game starts this week, and so. I don't know what.
Yeah, I'm not looking that forward to watching it. I would like to see what the outcome is. Boomer, what other games are you looking at? Anything in particular?
Well, there's another game I was kind of intrigued with. I don't know what to make of it at this point. Baylor and BYU. BYU's minus 3.5 on that.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know what to make of that game yet. I was eyeballing that, and I don't know. I'm not sure, so I'm just going to kind of keep an eye on that for the next few days and give that one some thought. So
a line I saw, and again, like Illinois and Indiana, the line kind of stinks.
Yeah.
You got BYU at home.
Are Big Ten refs doing this game, Dave? That'll impact how I do it.
You could see this being a situation where Baylor does not play in that type of altitude. It's a late game. But I mean, Baylor, I like Dave Aranda a lot, but they were replacing a lot, especially offensively. So that'll be intriguing. And Baylor, wants to try to repeat in Big 12. BYU is going to be a future conference foe here before you know it. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Don't know what to think. Rob, you got anything else on your board?
I mean, I was kind of looking at the Kansas State Missouri game. I liked the over on 54.5. It's also really? I also like Kansas State at -8. It'd be interesting. It didn't that last game, Kansas State that they played. That was hard. It was an enigma because I didn't watch the game. I just looked at the box score and how did they score?
Weird.
Yeah, it was very weird. And so I was trying to figure out, okay, geez, how did they score? What was it, 38 points or something on that? But yeah, I kind of like the over 54.5 on this. Just yeah, and the other one I'm looking at too, a lot of Big 12 games. I'm not really that interested in a lot of the Big 10 games this week for reasons that they're just not really playing anybody.
Sure.
Yeah, but West Virginia and Kansas will be another really interesting one. There's,
only 13
on 13 right now is what I'm seeing on ESPN. And I kind of like West Virginia at -13 on that to stick with my old, and that might even be my best bet for the week. Is West Virginia -13 if it sticks, but we won't know till Thursday what that line is at, so I'll have to wait and see because that's when we're making our picks, right? So
yeah, right. We'll see where that line moves. I mean, if you really want to bet it, you can bet it now at 13.
Get it now,
yeah, but you may not be able to make that bet for a best bet on Thursday. All right, well, I've got a few here that I'm looking at. Oklahoma State and Arizona State. You're talking about Big 12. That should be a good matchup.
All future Big 12 members, Dave? Is that what you're implying?
Maybe.
I thought that was just a Big 12 matchup. I got confused there for a second.
It does seem like a natural fit, really.
It really does. It really does.
The Missouri K-State game is also on my list, Rob. I don't know. Adrian went 5 of 11 for
43 yards or something.
43 yards.
It was under 50 yards. Yeah.
I'm sure that Deuce Vaughn looked great, but I mean, I don't know if I trust Kansas State's offense quite yet. And Missouri's still an SEC team. I mean, that's something. So I guess maybe, but you're taking an SEC team against what should be a middle of the pack Big 12 team, and you're giving them a touchdown. It's tempting. Transitioning to more SEC, I like the over in Tennessee Pitt probably. That could be a fun game to watch. Maybe the over in Washington State, Wisconsin. A lot of good crossovers here with these early season games. Game I'm intrigued with here, and maybe it has some value if you can get it right now. Louisville will just look like trash against Syracuse. Scott Satterfield might be in trouble down there, guys. I tell you. At UCF's favored by 6.5. I just don't know if Louisville can score enough points to stick with a relatively, fine-tuned UCF offense that just keeps on plugging and replacing players and keep on producing points. So that's an intriguing one. One I'm probably staying away on, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Kentucky going down to the swamp. Florida off that big victory. Anthony Richardson looked really good versus Utah. Utah looked good in that game too. I thought Utah did nothing to shame themselves. They could bounce back, win 11 more games, and potentially still make the playoff. But Florida looked better than expected. For goodness sakes, guys. I mean, we've been struggling with this for 5 freaking years. And Florida's new head coach, who his former head coach was the guy who got the job because Scott Frost supposedly turned Florida down. And their new head coach's name is Billy. Right?
Yeah,
and he goes and wins his first game against the 7th.
Yeah.
What, Boomer?
That's a classic SEC type name. You got to go with Billy in it, yeah.
Billy Napier wins his first game as the coach of Florida against the number 17 team in the country. So frustrating, but Anthony Richardson, I think that's the quarterback, looked very legit. But Kentucky beat him last year. Kentucky, some of them have them slated as the number 2 team in the SEC East. That should be an intriguing matchup. I don't know if I have a take on that one.
Yeah, that is a tough one. I looked at it too. I almost brought it up, but then I thought, maybe the over might be a play on there. It's 52 points. But other than that, I mean, Kentucky at Florida. Florida seems to, I don't know, man. Like 4.5 might be, if you're going to take Florida at 4.5 right now. I mean, maybe, but I don't know. Like, who is Kentucky? Like, it's Kentucky, and you don't know. And I looked at this, and I thought, am I looking at a basketball ranking? It's just, this would be a hell of a basketball matchup. Number 20 Kentucky at Florida, but from a football standpoint, it's just so iffy because like Kentucky could just easily come out and just crap the bet this year. So I have no idea.
It's a polar team. There's a lot of guys that are still high on Kentucky. Others are like, no, they're going to take a step back. Will Levis is quarterback there, guy that we handled quite easily when he was at Penn State, subbing in for Sean Clifford now, like 3 years ago.
Is Wandale still there? Is he?
No, he's in the NFL.
Right? Yeah, he's in the NFL now.
Right? Yep.
Who did he end up with? I can't even remember. Didn't he sign as like a undrafted free agent or something?
No, he got drafted and he's doing quite well.
Oh, okay.
They're very high.
I can't remember.
Giants, I think.
He got drafted in the second round, I think.
Really? Giants
or third? Yeah.
Sounds right. New York Giants. Am I wrong?
Giants. That sounds right. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just stopped following him after you left, so I forgot.
A few more that I'll throw out since it's the Betcast and not the Wandale Robbins show. Let's see here. Wake Forest is only 8.5 point favorites over Vanderbilt. Maybe too much being put into that Vanderbilt thumping over Hawaii. Hawaii is horrible. I've already taken Michigan to cover the 50 versus Hawaii this week. It's 50. You don't see that very often.
No, that's a lot of points.
In FBS versus FBS to have a 50-point spread, but Michigan is favored by 50, now 51, I believe, over Hawaii. Vanderbilt only 8.5-point dogs to a Wake Forest team. Is missing Sam Hartman, but intrigued on that one. And I'll wrap it up with Oregon State, Fresno. Oregon State's actually a dog right now at Fresno. Oregon State looked pretty good last week, beating up on Boise, really controlling that game. They've got I can't remember his name, Boomer. I don't know if you watched that game too. Number 12 is like a two-way player for Oregon State. He does everything. He's their backup quarterback. He ran the ball. He caught the ball. He made tackles. I was like, who is this guy? So Oregon State, somewhat intriguing. Tyjon Lindsey is still on that team. And Tristan Gebbia is a captain, but not the starting quarterback.
And anytime Fresno's at home, and we talk about
it is a tough place to play.
It is because anytime Fresno is the one place. I'm a California kid, and I can tell you Fresno is the one place where fans will always show out for their team in California, right?
It's
like it's not Southern Cal. It is. It's really hot, but they love their high school football in the Central Valley. Let me tell you, man, like they love it out there, and they love their Fresno Bulldogs, and people will travel far and wide, and that's a tough place to play. I've actually been to a couple games down there in Fresno, and it's a great atmosphere. Yeah, it's a great
Nebraska
atmosphere.
was down there. I don't know when that was, Boomer. I forget now, but we visited Fresno probably in the Pelini years, remember right? And we were able to get out with a victory. But that's no picnic down there.
2016-ish sounds about right. Yeah.
Oh, it was a Riley year. Was that right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I remember right. Yeah. That'd be my guess. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, anything else bet-wise before we get to our parting shots?
What was the over/under on the Clemson Georgia Tech game?
I got it at 51.
Oh, well, it's currently sitting at 50.
Perfect. That's all you need. And there's a minute 35.
And there's a minute
so-
35 left. So
And Clemson has the ball. You're in good shape, Dave. So, yep.
No, they're kicking the extra point. I'm
Oh.
gonna
oh,
look.
there. Oh, okay. I didn't even see that. There you go. There's your 51. Sorry,
unless
Dave.
blocked. No, I'm gonna.
Oh,
push
nobody
it.
blocks a field goal. Or an extra
Nobody
point.
blocks a field goal at the
Yeah,
end of
that
the
doesn't
game.
happen.
What are you talking? Or an
Yeah.
extra point? That doesn't happen.
Well, that's how my betting week went. All right, guys, let's get out with some parting shots. Rob, I'll let you go first.
Oh, of course you're going to let me go. Hey, Redcasters, I am really looking forward to making the trip out to Lincoln. I'm really looking forward to seeing the other Redcasters. Regardless of what you guys see on these shows, we're all really good friends. We've all known each other. I mean, those other guys have known each other a long time. I've known Dave for like 12 years now, or some crazy amount of time in my life. And I'm really looking forward to getting out to Lincoln, seeing everybody this weekend. Going to the game. I'm going to be at the 311 concert on Friday night while these guys are doing their live show. It's just going to be a great weekend. I cannot wait to get out of town. It can't happen soon enough. So hopefully I see some of you Redcasters out there too, and come by if you see us and you actually recognize our faces from YouTube. Feel free to stop me and say hello. I'd be more than happy to stop and chat with you at all. So.
Absolutely. I'd be remiss not to mention that we are broadcasting live on Friday night from the Hell Varsity Club there in suburban La Vista. And should be a lot of fun. Me and Honky will be there. Maybe a few others will be around. But until then, Boomer, get us out of here.
Well, the only thing I've got is just a question for our loyal fans and listeners that are watching live and chatting via YouTube. With our brilliant scheduling model that we've done in the past, scheduling shows opposite national championship games and things like that, we kind of forgotten Monday nights. Monday Night Football is a thing. So kind of leaving it up to you guys. Would you want us to continue to do Monday shows, or do you prefer it a different day of the week? What's more convenient for you? What do we get the most interaction with?
That'd be a
Why
great
don't you guys
Twitter
let
poll.
us know? Yeah, send us a tweet. We'll probably throw a poll up maybe later and see what you guys want. I mean, we're flexible. We try to be the fan podcast. So we want to work with what you guys can do. So just let us know what's best for you guys, and we're flexible. We can make it work. So
Absolutely. All right, guys. Great show. Good talking to you. Looking forward to seeing everyone this weekend. For now, let's call that a Go Big Redcast.
Go Big Red.
A Huda Media Production.
A Huda